Member Week is here for pros at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off hundreds of items from tools and paint to kitchen and bath and more. Just in time to stock up for this year's jobs. Plus, earn 5 times the points on an eligible purchase. Shop member deals in-store and online from January 8th through the 14th. Still not a member? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help, you save. Point boosters subject to exclusions and more terms apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Visit Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
What is going on, Canes fam? It is game day. It is time for the CFP semifinal, the Fiesta Bowl, the Miami Hurricanes versus the Ole Miss Rebels. And look, I'll be the first to tell you that I think the Canes had a chance to run the table in the playoffs. 100%. People said we didn't belong. We didn't do all this jibber jabber. I knew we belonged. I knew we can run the table. But I think there's very few people that could have guessed just how dominant we would have looked up until this point. We may arguably be the second best team left in the playoffs, arguing against Indiana. Indiana also looking very, very strong these playoffs. But you look at Indiana's, line of wins, Miami's line of wins, both very convincing wins against very good opponents. Miami Hurricanes dominating Ohio State. That was not my bingo card. But it has all led up to us today in the Fiesta Bowl against Ole Miss, who talk about storylines all year. Ole Miss, one of the best storylines in college football. They lose their head coach. Their head coach basically walks out on them. And now they decide, you know what, we're going to go on a national championship run without you. They're one game away. We're the team standing in the way. And they're also coming off an insane shootout of a win against Georgia. We saw highlights, Trinidad Chamblas looking as, potentially one of the most dynamic players left in the playoffs. Even without it, he's probably one of the most dynamic playmakers in all of college football. The kid is very, very good. And right now, that's the excitement, right? It's gonna be a lot of how will Trinidad Chamblas, make do against Miami's defense, which, as Canes fans, we're no stranger. We know, hey, this team runs through the defense. We want it to be a defensive shootout. We want it to be a go through the trenches kind of game. And if you haven't accepted that, listen, man, it's okay to win football games in the trenches, in the mud, getting your elbows and your knees dirty. That's the way we want to win football games, and that's the way we have decided to win football games. And listen, it's been great up until now, right? We haven't had to go out there and score 40, and thank God for it. If we're having to go out there and score 40, that means we're catching up, or we're having to keep up with somebody in the scoring. But if you can really control the pace of the game, which is what we saw against, Texas A&M, what you saw against Ohio State, what you saw in the last stretch of games, in the regular season, that's really where we want to be. So I look at this matchup against, a fast-paced Ole Miss offense, a very good Ole Miss offense with Trinidad Chamblas, one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in college football. Keywan Lacey, he's dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury, but probably the second best running back behind Jeremiah Love in college football. That kid is a stud. Ran for, I believe, almost 200 yards, I think, 98 yards and 2 touchdowns against Georgia was a huge, huge part of that game. Obviously, Trinidad Chamblas was the playmaker in that game. But I look at this and I'm like, how can we combat a fast-paced offense? Because we've seen in a lot of games when teams speed up on us, right, we tend, to get caught, I wouldn't say unprepared, but we get caught a little bit, off guard, right? That fast-paced kind of, no-huddle offense is sometimes hard to keep up with. But I think the biggest goal now is don't let them score or don't let them get, 5-play scoring drives. You want Ole Miss to have to go on 11, 12, 13-play drives, and if they do score, they're getting field goals out of it, right? This is not a team that wants to live in a long drive area, right? Because we saw it against Ohio State. Yeah, they had their little bit of a comeback, right? They scored their two touchdowns in the third. It was a 17-14 game in the fourth. But their 2 drives, I think, took up 11 minutes of game time. And in a game where you're trailing, you don't want to, you want to be scoring on a whim. You want to get the ball back, right? You saw in the Georgia Ole Miss game, I think those guys are just trading the ball. It's like, okay, you want it here. Okay, you want it back? Bam, bam, bam. Those guys are just trading possessions. And obviously, where our strength is like, okay, we're going to get you off the field quick, and then we're going to make you stay off the field for a very, very long time. Because we live through our run game, whereas Ole Miss lives through their quick RPO, big play, explosive play offense. So this is going to be a very big challenge of, can Miami stay in control of the game? And I'm a very unbiased, I look at these games and I look at it very statistically, and I try not to be too much of a fan. Obviously, I want my Canes to go in there, take care of business, go to the Natty. But, there is a recipe here where things could get ugly for the Canes, right? You see what Ole Miss did against a very good Georgia team, right? Some people said, Canes fans are like, we don't want Georgia. We'd rather take Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss goes in and beats Georgia, and you saw what they did, how explosive they were. And, I wouldn't say you get scared, but you kind of respect a little bit more. You're like, dang. And on top of all that, they still have the chip on their shoulder, still trying to give the old middle finger to Lane Kiffin, who's still up there in the stands getting paid for all these wins, right? So not only do you have an explosive offense, but you have an offense with a chip on their shoulder. What's the combatant of that going to be? And I think it's just going to be staying in control of the game from the first drive all the way to the last, and that is slow down the game, even if it's to a snail's pace, and force them to go in the trenches with you. Because reality is, with this Miami Hurricanes team, when we've seen it, no one wants to go into the trenches with Miami. They want to go over top of Miami. They want to try to go around us, but no one is prepared to go through us, and that is why we have been as successful as we are in these playoffs, right? And the Ohio State game was that final tip of the cap to show, oh shit, man, these guys, they got something up there on both sides of the ball, right? Everyone talks about the defense, but no one, the offensive line, those guys are freaking creatures as well. Those guys are insane. And it really is just a culmination of Mario Cristobal's identity of how he wants to play football games, right? Last year, very flash, very much big play, explosive offense. That's because we had to. We look at games now this year where we can score 24 points, really 17 points because one of them was a pick six, and win a game comfortably. Texas A&M was a little bit of a fluke. Obviously, you had the wind, but you just saw us go against one of the top teams in college football, a championship favorite, and win comfortably, scoring 17 points, 24 points total. And I said it before the year, right? Before we played Oregon, the last time I talked to you guys in this setting, I said, if we can win 24 points, we should win football games. Because this defense, the way they play, the way they control the line of scrimmage, and the way they cause teams to make mistakes. And that leads me to my next point. I think if you put Ole Miss in a 10 to 13 play drive, they're going to make a mistake because they're not used to playing a slow brand of football. Let's catch the defense off guard, not, oh, damn, they're ready for us. And they got 10 toes down. They're like, okay, they're ready for what's about to happen next. And I think that's where we are going to have the advantage. Overall, looking at both sides of the ball, a lot of playmakers on Ole Miss. Obviously, I only talked about Trinidad Chamblas and Kewan Lacey, but offensively, they got some pretty good receivers. Harrison Wallace, Deshaun Stribling. Obviously, on the side, you look at our receivers, Malachi Toney, the superstar of the bunch, but Keelan Marion, CJ Daniels. I hope they all get active. So it's going to be a tale of, does Ole Miss do what they do, or do they finally run into their match? Is there a world where both can be true, where they do get some points on the board, but they just can't sustain it for as long as they can because of how physical we play? That's yet to be determined. But I do think that this game is going to be a lot of discipline and a lot of game management on the side of Mario Cristobal in terms of if Ole Miss wants to go fast and you see your team kind of getting caught on their heels, maybe you have to call a timeout. Maybe you have to slow the game down, make some adjustments, give Heatherman a chance to get his boys right, make some substitutions, right? If you see that happening, he does his things. I think UM can comfortably win this game, but I'm not blind to the fact that Ole Miss, at any given moment, can score the ball, right? And that's been against some very good defenses throughout the year. But with that being said, I'm very confident in this UM team. I'm very confident in, who we have under center. Carson Beck. Didn't even talk about that guy. Much respect to Carson Beck. The guy's shown why, he was brought in to play quarterback, why he is the veteran of this team, lowering his shoulder against the DB to get a first down, 3rd and 11. I don't even want to question the guy's integrity anymore. I don't want to question him as a playmaker. Brother, that guy has been perfect in his own way. And I think he's going to continue that because reality is Ole Miss's defense is not going to challenge our offense. They allow 156 yards a game on rushing alone, and our rushing attack, I believe, against Ohio State had 157 yards. Unless something drastic happens and, I don't know, they decide to find the spawn of the Dominican Sue between, pre-game and the first snap, I see us very, very easily running the ball. And hopefully that opens up, the chance for Carson Beck to go in there, make some good decisions, make some quick passes. But overall, man, I definitely think, this game can go a lot of ways. But the way I do see it going is that, Miami is going to lean on them. We're going to suck the life out of them. And we're going to take care of business and play for the national championship here in Miami. Against who that will be, yet to find out. Me personally, I would love it to be Indiana. That's yet to see. But with all that being said, man, so proud of the Canes for being in this position. So many Canes fans around the country here in Miami has really rallied behind this team. They're happy to see the Canes finally back in the spotlight. Kudos to Cristobal and his job on that roster, building this team up and really, really dedicating his life to making the identity of the Hurricanes what it was back in the day. Gritty, hard-nosed, in the trenches, and pardon my French, a bit of fuck you football, which I love. So with that being said, Canes for the win and Canes to the natty. I'll catch you guys post-game.